I still remember the news. Back in March of 2009, I was living and serving a church in Hannibal, Missouri. And I heard the news about an Illinois pastor right outside of St. Louis in a town called Maryville, Illinois. An Illinois pastor who was shot and killed, and 2 other parishioners were injured after an unknown gunman. He opened up fire during Sunday services at the First Baptist Church in Maryville, Illinois. The gunman walked down the church aisle, and the pastor and he spoke briefly before the man pulled out a gun and started shooting at the Reverend Fred Winters. He had his Bible with him, and he pulled up his Bible to shield him from the bullets. The first bullet hit his Bible, and the parishioners that were there at the church that day, they said that when the bullet hit the Bible, it was like confetti exploded everywhere. Reverend Winters, however, was shot 3 more times and was later pronounced dead at Anderson Hospital. The other pastors and the parishioners says they'd never seen the man. They had never met him before. They had no idea what his motives were. And there were about 150 in worship that morning to witness the shooting. Others say that the gunman used a bulletin to conceal his gun so that nobody would see it. You know, my friends, this is becoming more and more of a reality in our world. However, Jesus said, "Blessed are the persecuted." Blessed are the persecuted. How do we understand or even comprehend that when the church or even others are persecuted, that is or constitutes a blessing? But you know, before we go any further, we have to define our terms. What was Jesus talking about when he used the word persecuted? What was he talking about? Well, when you look at the original language that Jesus spoke a dialect of Hebrew called Aramaic. And that Aramaic was later translated into Greek. That was the common language at that time, particularly when the Bible was being written down. So the word that is used is called dioko. And that is the word for persecution. Now, the thing about persecution, using this definition, is that it has a positive and it has a negative connotation. Okay? Now, the positive connotation is meaning to earnestly pursue. Earnestly pursue. If you've ever earnestly pursued something, that is very similar to what Jesus was saying. You earnestly pursue something. However, here's the negative connotation of it. And this was more like what Jesus was talking about. It means to aggressively chase, like a hunter pursuing a catch or a prize. So to be persecuted is to be hunted down. That's the context that Jesus was talking about here. And Jesus knew that this was going to happen. He warned the disciples of this. In the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 20, Jesus said, hey guys, they persecuted me, and they will persecute you. And then in verse 21, Jesus said, they will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. Jesus told them, the Christian life, if we are living it authentically, genuinely, we will experience difficulty and hardship and suffering and, yes, persecution in this world. The Apostle Paul knew this. He says in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12, he says, in fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. This is what Paul said. Now, what did he mean by a godly life? What does that mean? Well, I think that maybe what Paul was getting at here is a life that is dedicated completely, not necessarily to religion, not necessarily to certain doctrines. That's not necessarily a godly life. What he was saying here is a godly life is a life that is dedicated to love. Unconditional, sacrificial love. A life that is dedicated to compassion, empathy, forgiveness, inclusion, mercy. Bottom line, a godly life is imitating Jesus, living like Jesus. And people are not going to like that. Jesus said, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. And that's that godly life that I'm talking about. Notice that he didn't say self-righteousness. Big difference there. But the righteousness where we are imitators of Jesus Christ. Living the way that he lived is going to be a stumbling block to many people. Maybe even family, friends, co-workers. And yet Jesus says, when you live this way, and even if you're persecuted, you're blessed. You're a blessed person. Now, Christian persecution is real. It is real, my friends. John Fox, in his book, The Fox Book of Martyrs, he says that the first persecution of the church took place in the year 67 under Nero, the 6th emperor of Rome. It was very widespread. And then just hearing about how the disciples, the inner circle of Jesus, do you know how they died? Do you know? Let me give you some idea. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. Peter and Paul, for example, both were martyred in Rome around AD 66. Paul was beheaded, and Peter was crucified upside down. Andrew, one of the disciples, was also crucified. Thomas was pierced through his body with spears. Philip was cruelly put to death. We're not sure how. Matthew was stabbed to death in Ethiopia. Bartholomew was put to death, they believe, also in Ethiopia, died as a martyr. James was stoned to death, stoned and then clubbed to death. Simon the Zealot was killed because he refused to sacrifice to the sun god. Matthias, who came in later, he was burned to death at the stake. And John, the Apostle John, he was actually the only one that died of natural causes. However, they did boil him in oil. He did survive, and then he lived the rest of his life in exile on the island of Patmos. That's persecution. That's the real deal right there. But it seems that today, making this real for you and me, does this happen to American Christians all the time? Occasionally, yes, it does happen. But do any of us really have any fear today that we walk out that door, somebody is going to try to put us to death because we've been in here worshiping? It could happen, but chances are, because we live in America, it's not going to happen to you. As a matter of fact, there have been studies done, and they have listed the top 50 nations where Christians are being persecuted. Where do you think the United States is on that list? Of the top 50 nations, any guesses? It's not on the list. It's nowhere on the list. The number one nation that's on the list, North Korea. So if you're a Christian in North Korea, you better be careful. But here in the United States, we don't have to deal a whole lot with that. Yes, we have our stories, but it seems more that we as Christians, we tend to really persecute one another more than anything. That Christians are persecuting other Christians. Catholics versus Protestants. Catholics versus Orthodox. Protestants versus Protestants. And so on and so forth. It's like we turn on ourselves. I remember not too long ago, I had preached a funeral, and at this funeral, I focused primarily on God's unconditional love. I focused on God's amazing grace. I focused on God's radical mercy. And that nothing that we could ever say or nothing that we could ever do could make God love us any more or any less. That's the kind of love that God has for us. Well, on the way out, there was a lady who looked me in the eyes, bless her heart, and she said, if you keep preaching that way, you're going to send that whole group to hell. I'd never met this person before. Never seen her. And I said, thank you for your feedback. I don't even know if that counts as persecution, though. If somebody disagrees with you, is that persecution? If somebody irritates you, is that persecution? If somebody annoys you, is that persecution? If I drive through, I was thinking about this, if I drive through the Taco Bell drive-through and I'm wearing my collar and they see that I'm a Christian and they see that I'm a pastor and they mess up my order, am I going to scream, persecution? That's not persecution. Christians, we have to be careful. We persecute each other. Christians also persecute non-Christians or those who are struggling with their faith. Those who are wrestling with, those who don't have it all figured out. Really, none of us do. I'm reminded of a young man in my last congregation who thought that he might be an atheist. Wasn't sure if he believed in a kind of God who is a wrathful, angry, vindictive, retributive God. Had a hard time believing in that kind of God. And when this young man would share his concerns or his questions with other people at his school, guess who were the ones who bullied him more than anything? Good Christian kids from local youth groups. Those were the ones. Christians, we do more persecution of each other, it seems. So we have to be careful. Just because something happens that we don't like or somebody disagrees with or what have you, we instantly we play the persecution card. Don't do that. Many of you have heard in the news about, and I'm not trying to be controversial or anything here, but you've heard about I believe it's the county clerk in Kentucky. We've all heard the story of the lady Kim Davis, I believe is her name. And this is a lady who was locked up, put in jail, and some are saying that she's being persecuted. Some are saying that it's because of her Christian faith that she was put in jail. And they call it persecution, whereas others are saying that it has nothing to do with her faith. It has everything to do with her not doing her job as she was elected to do. Is that really persecution? It's a good question. Or the latest one. Have any of you heard of the latest controversy with Starbucks? Anybody? You know what Starbucks is, right? Starbucks is the coffee company, right? It's a secular company, and they make coffee which is way, way overpriced. But I really like it. And this year they came out with a red Christmas cup. However, this year they didn't put like a Christmas tree on it or snowflakes. And so Christians all across the nation were screaming persecution because it didn't have a Christmas tree on it, because it didn't have snowflakes on it. It's not like that they had put a cross or a nativity on there. That is not persecution. After all, we ended up adopting Christmas Day from the pagans anyway. You guys know that, right? December the 25th. Jesus was probably not born on December 25th. But we celebrate it. That's okay. It was probably sometime in the spring, actually. That's not persecution. And so, by the way, this is what they were going to do. They were like, we're going to show Starbucks. We're going to go into Starbucks and we're going to protest. And so when they give us our cup of coffee or when we make our order, what they'll usually do is they'll say, well, what is your name? And they'll call out your name, right? And so when your coffee is ready, they'll say, Steve Atkinson, here's your mocha with whipped cream. That's what I like. I like the mocha with whipped cream. Steve, and I'm like, here I am right there. So this is what they decided to do. We're going to show them. When they ask what our name is, we're going to tell them, Merry Christmas. So when they call out our name, they're going to say, Merry Christmas, your coffee is ready. You know, some of the people working at Starbucks are probably Christians. They're just trying to do their job. And if you think that's a really positive witness, it's not. If you want to be a positive witness, when you go in there and you buy your coffee, why don't you leave a big tip? Yeah? Why don't you buy the coffee of the complete stranger behind you? That's going to send more of a message of Jesus' love than anything. But if a company leaves a Christmas tree off of a cup, that's not persecution. You know, it seems that we have to be careful because we Christians, we might have what is called CPC. Have you ever heard of that? Oh, it's a dreaded thing. CPC. You don't know what it is? CPC is Christian Persecution Complex. And that's, you don't want to get that. CPC. But you know what? That's not real persecution. Do you remember how the disciples, the apostles, died? Do you remember? Do you remember what they did to Jesus? That's the real deal. And when we say we are being persecuted because of some kind of coffee cup, that is discounting our brothers and sisters in faith who came before us. That minimizes their sacrifice. Christian Persecution Complex. Now, okay, I'm getting fired up here today. But I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I know I need to go. What is our response? How should we respond? Okay? I'm not denying that it's not real. It is real, my friends. I know that. I know that it is. But how should we respond? Well, we can either do it the human response or the holy response. The human response, and I'm going to try to hurry up here, is we can seek revenge. Okay? We can show resentment. We can be self-righteous. We could do that, or there could be the holy response, meaning the Christ-like response based on what Jesus told us. He told us how to respond, and this is what Jesus said. He said, love your enemies. That's right, he said it. He also said, do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who hurt you. In other words, he says, be a blessing. Somehow, some way, try to find a way to love. Somehow, some way. Oh, and the Apostle Paul, he also said in Romans chapter 12, don't want to let this go. He says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. There it is. That's what our response should be. Oh, and Paul didn't stop there, and I'm about to close. He says also, if your enemy is hungry, what should we do? Kill him? No, he said feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's it. I know it's not easy. I know it's complicated. I don't have time to get into the specifics, but that is our response as followers of Jesus. And Jesus says if we do this, then you will be blessed. God will bless us somehow, some way. Now, I want to close with this. It's a little poem that I came across. Here at Chapel by the Sea, I want everybody to believe and to truly feel that Chapel by the Sea is a safe place. When you come here, you come just as you are. This is a safe place. Nobody here is going to persecute you because you are any different, or if you are struggling, or no matter what it is, you are welcome. I like to think of chapel as a big tent where there is room for all of us. And so in closing, I want to share with you this piece called All Are Welcome. And it goes like this. We here at Chapel by the Sea extend a special welcome to those who are single, those who are married, those who are divorced, gay, straight, filthy rich, dirt poor, y no habla inglés. We welcome all races, all genders, all ages, and the differently abled. We extend a special welcome to those who have crying newborns, skinny as a rail, or could afford to lose a few pounds. We welcome you if you sing like Andre Bocelli, or you can't carry a note in a bucket. You're welcome here if you're just browsing, if you just woke up, or you just got out of jail. We don't care if you're more Catholic than the Pope or haven't been in church since little Joey's baptism. You are welcome here. We extend a special welcome to those who are over 60 but not grown up yet, and to teenagers who are growing up too fast. We welcome soccer moms, NASCAR dads, starving artists, tree huggers, latte sippers, vegetarians, and junk food eaters. We welcome you if you're having problems or down in the dumps or you don't like organized religion. We've been there too. Even if you blew all your offering money at the casino, you're welcome here. We offer a special welcome to those who think the earth is flat, who work hard, who don't work, who can't spell, or came because grandma is in town and wanted to go to church. We welcome those who are inked, pierced, or both. We offer a special welcome to those who could use a prayer right now, had religion shoved down your throat as a kid, or got lost in traffic and wound up here by mistake. We welcome tourists, seekers, doubters, bleeding hearts, and yes, we welcome you. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And God's people said, Amen.